Something quiet has been moving beneath the surface of your story, and tonight, for a few moments, I want you to set everything else aside and listen carefully. Not because something dramatic is rushing toward you, but because a truth has been unfolding so gently that most people would have missed it entirely. Yet it found its way here. It found its way to you. There is a reason your heart felt drawn to this message. There is a reason you paused. And there is a reason that what happened around your special person recently continues to echo through their thoughts long after the moment itself ended. Picture this. Not a grand stage. Not a crowded room. Just a conversation that seemed ordinary at first. A conversation your special person never expected would stay with them. For a long time they carried questions they could not answer. Questions about timing. Questions about connection. Questions about why, despite every attempt to move forward, something always brought their attention back to you. They tried logic. They tried distance. They tried convincing themselves that what they felt would eventually fade into silence. Yet every path somehow circled back. Every distraction eventually lost its power. Every explanation felt incomplete. And deep inside, they began wondering whether there was something about you they still did not understand. Something hidden. Something deeper than appearances. Something that could not be measured by ordinary standards. Now stay with me, because this is where the story begins to change. One evening, after carrying those questions for longer than anyone realized, your special person found themselves sharing your picture during a conversation they almost canceled. They were not expecting answers. They were not expecting certainty. In fact, they arrived carrying more confusion than hope. They thought they would hear the same things they had heard before. General words. Simple observations. Nothing unforgettable. But the atmosphere shifted the moment your picture was placed in front of someone who looked at it differently. Not with judgment. Not with assumptions. Not with the eyes of the world. Just stillness. Complete stillness. And sometimes, my beloved child, stillness speaks louder than noise. The room became quiet. The kind of quiet that makes a person suddenly aware of their own heartbeat. The kind of quiet that feels less like waiting and more like witnessing. Your special person noticed it immediately. At first they thought nothing of it. Then seconds passed. And more seconds followed. The silence remained. No immediate answer. No rushed reaction. Only observation. Only patience. Only attention. Have you ever noticed how the most meaningful moments rarely announce themselves? They arrive softly, almost unnoticed, until suddenly everything feels different. That is exactly what happened. Your special person expected a quick response. Instead, they found themselves watching someone stare thoughtfully at your picture as if seeing details nobody else had ever paused long enough to notice. And with every passing moment, curiosity inside them grew stronger. What was being seen? What was being understood? What was causing such careful reflection? The questions multiplied, yet the answers did not come. Not yet, because some truths reveal themselves slowly, like sunrise, like the first light touching the horizon before the day fully appears. And this is where something important begins to unfold. You see, your special person had spent so much time focusing on circumstances surrounding you that they forgot to consider something much deeper. Who you truly are beneath everything visible. Not what people say about you. Not what others assume. Not the versions created by rumors, misunderstandings, or distance. The real you. The unseen you. The person behind the picture. The soul behind the smile. The strength behind the quiet moments nobody applauds. The resilience behind the chapters nobody reads. And somehow, without realizing it, your special person had been searching for that understanding all along. Not because they lacked feelings, but because feelings alone were never the whole story. There was another layer waiting to be discovered. A layer that would change how they viewed you. A layer that would challenge every assumption they had quietly carried. Don't skip this moment, because something important is waiting for you. The person looking at your picture finally spoke. Not quickly, not dramatically, just calmly, thoughtfully, as if every word mattered. And the first thing they said was not what your special person expected. In fact, it surprised them completely. The observation had nothing to do with appearance, nothing to do with status, nothing to do with circumstances. Instead, it pointed toward something far less obvious. Something your special person had overlooked because it could not be seen immediately. The words lingered in the air, simple, yet powerful, and the effect was immediate. Your special person became completely focused. Every distraction disappeared. Every wandering thought stopped. Because for the first time, someone was describing something about you that felt undeniably real. Not superficial, not temporary, real. And once a person encounters something real, it becomes difficult to ignore. The conversation continued, slowly, patiently, layer by layer. The deeper it went, the more your special person felt themselves revisiting memories they had almost forgotten. Moments involving you, conversations, small gestures, unexpected details, tiny pieces that once seemed insignificant. Suddenly they began fitting together like parts of a larger picture, a picture they had never fully seen before. Isn't it fascinating how understanding often arrives after the events themselves? How meaning sometimes waits until we are finally ready to receive it. Your special person was beginning to realize exactly that. What they once considered ordinary now appeared extraordinary. What they once dismissed now seemed important. What they once overlooked now felt impossible to ignore. And the more they listened, the more one realization quietly emerged. You have been carrying qualities that many people notice only after time reveals them. Not because those qualities are hidden, but because they are deeper than first impressions, deeper than quick judgments, deeper than surface-level understanding. And that realization stayed with them, long after the conversation moved forward, long after new observations were shared, long after the room returned to silence. Yet there was still one thing left unsaid, one observation that had not yet been revealed, one insight that seemed to explain everything. The person studying your picture paused once more, a longer pause this time. A pause that made your special person lean forward without even realizing it, because they sensed something meaningful was about to be spoken, something that connected every piece together, something that would finally explain why your presence had remained impossible to forget. The answer was close, closer than ever, and yet it remained just beyond reach, like a door slowly opening, like a page turning. Like the final moments before a mystery begins revealing its heart. Your special person waited. The silence returned. But this silence felt different. Not empty, not uncertain. Filled with possibility. Filled with understanding. Filled with something neither of them could fully explain. And as those next words began forming, your special person realized they were about to hear something they would remember for a very long time. But that revelation belongs to the next part. Because the moment those words were spoken, everything they thought they knew about you started changing in ways they never expected. There was no sudden interruption, no dramatic event, no grand display demanding attention. What happened next was far more powerful because of how quietly it arrived. The person studying your picture remained still for a few moments longer, as though they were searching for the most accurate way to describe something that could not easily be placed into words. Your special person sat there waiting, carrying questions they could no longer push aside. They had come looking for clarity, but what they were about to receive felt much deeper than an answer. It felt like a mirror being lifted toward a truth they had overlooked for far too long. Then the silence finally broke. The voice was calm, measured, certain, and the first sentence caused your special person to stop thinking altogether. Not because it sounded impossible, not because it sounded shocking, but because it felt strangely familiar, as though somewhere deep inside, they had always known it. The words pointed toward something about you that had been visible the entire time, yet rarely recognized by those moving too quickly through life. It was not about what you achieve. It was not about how much attention you receive. It was not about how loudly you speak or how often others praise you. It was about presence. A rare kind of presence. The kind that changes a room without trying. The kind that leaves people thinking about a conversation long after it ends. The kind that cannot be manufactured because it comes from something genuine. Your special person listened carefully. At first, they tried to analyze the statement logically, but the more they reflected on it, the more memories returned. Moments when your words arrived exactly when they needed them. Moments when your silence carried more meaning than endless explanations. Moments when your energy seemed to calm situations that should have become complicated. Little things. Small things. The kinds of things people often forget. Yet suddenly those forgotten moments felt important. Stay with this, because something meaningful is unfolding. The conversation continued, and another observation followed. This one reached even deeper. The person looking at your picture explained that some individuals spend years trying to become who they are meant to be, while others quietly carry certain qualities from the very beginning. Not perfection, not superiority, simply a natural depth that reveals itself more clearly with time. Your special person felt something shift inside them, not because they were hearing praise, but because they were hearing understanding. And understanding has a way of touching places that compliments never can. For so long they had viewed your connection through a narrow lens, through circumstances, through timing, through uncertainty, through questions that never seemed to find satisfying answers. Now they were being invited to see a larger picture, a picture that extended beyond temporary situations, a picture that explained why thoughts of you never seemed to disappear completely. The person studying your image leaned back slightly. Their eyes remained thoughtful, and then they shared something that caused your special person to become unusually quiet. They said that some people enter our lives to teach lessons, some arrive to create memories, some appear for a season and quietly leave, but every once in a while, someone carries a deeper purpose. Not because they are destined to save anyone, not because they are perfect, but because their presence encourages growth, reflection, and transformation in ways that are difficult to explain. Your special person felt those words settle heavily in their heart, because suddenly many things began making sense. Why certain moments involving you felt unforgettable, why certain conversations remained vivid, why even periods of distance never fully erased the connection. The answers were beginning to emerge, slowly, naturally, like pieces of a puzzle finding their place. And yet the most important realization had not arrived. Not yet, because the conversation was moving towards something even deeper, something your special person had not expected to hear. The atmosphere shifted once again, the kind of shift that happens when everyone present senses that a meaningful thought is approaching. No one rushed, no one interrupted, even the silence seemed intentional. Your special person waited, and then came another statement, one that would remain with them long after that day ended. The person studying your picture explained that your greatest quality was not something obvious. Most people would miss it. Many would overlook it entirely, because it revealed itself only through time, only through experience, only through genuine connection. What made you special was not what you showed the world. It was what remained consistent beneath changing circumstances. Your character, your heart, your ability to continue moving forward even when nobody understood the full story. The ability to remain kind without becoming weak. The ability to remain hopeful without becoming unrealistic. The ability to carry light without demanding attention for it. And suddenly your special person remembered moments they had almost forgotten. Tiny moments. Moments that once seemed ordinary. A message. A conversation. A gesture. A decision. Things they never considered extraordinary. Yet now they appeared completely different. Because viewed through a new perspective, those moments revealed patterns. Patterns pointing toward who you truly are. Don't skip this part, because something important is waiting for you. The realization growing inside your special person was becoming impossible to ignore. They began understanding that much of what they admired about you had never been connected to appearances or circumstances. It was connected to authenticity, to sincerity, to the parts of you that remain unchanged when nobody is watching. And that realization carried unexpected emotion. Because authentic people are rare. Not because goodness is rare, but because consistency is rare. Anyone can shine during easy seasons. Anyone can appear strong when life is comfortable. But character reveals itself during uncertainty. And according to what was being shared, your character had already revealed itself many times. Your special person sat quietly, thinking, reflecting, replaying countless memories. Then another pause arrived. A long one. Long enough for anticipation to build once more. Long enough for curiosity to return. The person studying your picture seemed to be considering whether to continue, as though the next observation carried particular weight. Your special person's attention sharpened immediately, because they sensed this next part mattered. The room felt different again. Still calm, still peaceful, yet undeniably significant. Then finally the next words emerged. Words that shifted the conversation in an entirely unexpected direction. The person explained that your journey was teaching something to everyone connected with it, including your special person, including people who may not even realize they are learning. Because your story carried lessons about patience, about timing, about seeing beyond appearances, about recognizing value before circumstances make it obvious. And that statement struck deeper than anything said before. Because your special person suddenly realized a difficult truth. There were moments when they had underestimated certain aspects of you. Not intentionally, not out of malice, simply because they had not yet seen the full picture. Now that picture was becoming clearer. And with every new insight, appreciation continued growing. Yet there was one final observation waiting beneath everything else. One thought the person had not yet revealed. One realization that connected every previous statement together. Your special person sensed it immediately. The conversation had been leading somewhere all along. Every observation, every pause, every insight, every reflection, all of it pointed toward one deeper understanding. And just before that understanding was spoken aloud, the person looking at your picture smiled gently and said something that caused your special person's heart to race with curiosity. Because according to them, the most extraordinary thing about you was not what you had already shown the world. It was what people were only beginning to recognize. And when they explained exactly what they meant, your special person felt as though an entirely new chapter had quietly begun. A strange thing happens when a person begins to see someone clearly for the first time. Nothing about that person may have changed overnight, yet everything appears different. The same memories remain. The same conversations remain. The same moments remain. But the meaning behind them transforms. That is exactly where your special person found themselves now. Sitting with thoughts they could no longer dismiss, carrying a feeling that the conversation had uncovered something important, something that had been standing in plain sight all along. The smile from the person studying your picture lingered for only a moment before fading back into thoughtful silence. Your special person waited, not impatiently, not anxiously, but with the kind of attention people give to moments they know they will remember. And then the explanation finally began, slowly, carefully, as though every word deserved room to breathe. The person said that many individuals spend years searching for extraordinary signs while overlooking extraordinary people. They look for grand moments. They look for certainty. They look for dramatic proof. Yet some of life's most meaningful connections reveal themselves through consistency, kindness, understanding, and quiet influence. The room became still again, because those words seemed to describe something your special person had experienced without fully recognizing. How many times had they found themselves thinking about a simple interaction with you? How many times had a small memory unexpectedly returned? How many times had your presence felt larger than the moment itself? The answers were becoming impossible to ignore. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. The person studying your picture continued. They explained that your energy carried something uncommon. Not perfection. Not mystery for the sake of mystery. Not unattainable qualities, something far more meaningful. You carried depth, the kind of depth that reveals itself gradually, the kind that rewards patience, the kind that cannot be understood through first impressions alone. Your special person immediately thought back to the beginning, back to the first conversations, back to the earliest moments, and suddenly they realized something remarkable. Their understanding of you had been growing the entire time. Every interaction had uncovered another layer. Every conversation had revealed another truth. Every memory had added another piece to a picture that was still unfolding. And perhaps that was why they could never completely walk away from their thoughts about you. Because there was always something more to discover. Always another layer waiting beneath the surface. Always another reason to look closer. The realization settled deeply within them. Yet the conversation was not finished. Not even close. Because now it was moving toward the question your special person had carried for so long. Why? Why had this connection remained so significant? Why had thoughts of you continued returning? Why did certain memories refuse to fade? The answer arrived in a way they never expected. The person studying your picture explained that some people enter our lives and leave us unchanged. Others quietly challenge us to become better versions of ourselves. Not through pressure, not through demands, but through example, through presence, through the simple act of being who they are. When those words were spoken, your special person felt an immediate connection to them. Because whether they realized it at the time or not, your presence had encouraged reflection. It had encouraged growth. It had encouraged them to ask questions about themselves they might never have asked otherwise. And suddenly they understood why forgetting you had never been as simple as they once imagined. You were connected to something larger than a memory. You were connected to a chapter of personal transformation. A chapter still unfolding. A chapter still teaching lessons. And that realization changed everything. The atmosphere became lighter, yet somehow deeper at the same time. The person looking at your picture leaned forward slightly. Their eyes carried a calm certainty now, as though the pieces were finally coming together. Then came another observation, one that felt almost like the missing piece of a puzzle. They explained that your greatest strength may be something you rarely recognize in yourself. Because it feels natural to you. It feels ordinary. Yet others notice it more than you realize. Your ability to remain genuine. Your ability to remain yourself. Even when circumstances encourage people to become someone else. Your special person immediately remembered moments when you chose honesty over convenience. Moments when you remained kind despite disappointment. Moments when you showed patience even when impatience would have been easier. Tiny moments. Uncelebrated moments. Yet those moments revealed character. And character leaves an impression that lasts far longer than appearances ever could. Don't skip. This next realization matters. The conversation had now reached a point where your special person was no longer simply listening. They were feeling gratitude. Feeling understanding. Feeling a growing appreciation for things they once overlooked. And with every passing minute, one truth became clearer. They had spent too much time focusing on questions about the future while failing to fully appreciate what was already present. The value, the depth, the authenticity, the quiet strength, all of it had been there, waiting to be recognized. Then something unexpected happened. The person studying your picture asked a question. A simple question. Yet it changed the entire direction of the conversation. They asked your special person whether they had ever considered that the qualities they admired most about you were the very qualities that made this connection feel different. The question lingered. Your special person did not answer immediately, because the answer was obvious. And yet they had never framed it that way before. Of course that was the reason. Of course that was what made you unforgettable. Not one single moment. Not one single conversation. Not one dramatic event. But the collection of countless small truths that consistently pointed toward who you really are. The realization felt profound. Not because it was complicated, but because it was simple. Sometimes the deepest truths are. The conversation continued for a while longer. Stories were discussed. Memories were revisited. Observations were shared. And throughout it all, a growing sense of clarity remained. Yet there was still one final thing the person wanted to say. One last insight. One last observation. One final piece of understanding. The room became quiet once more. Not an uncomfortable silence. A meaningful one. The kind that appears just before an important thought arrives. Your special person could feel it. The conversation had been leading toward this moment from the very beginning. Every word, every reflection, every realization, all of it pointed here. Then finally the person looked at your picture again. Not quickly, not casually, but with the same thoughtful attention they had shown from the start. And what they said next caused your special person to become completely still. Because according to them, the most important part of your story had not happened yet. The qualities they saw in you were not the conclusion. They were the foundation, the beginning, the preparation for something still unfolding. And when they started explaining what that meant, your special person realized the conversation was about to reveal a perspective that would change the way they viewed your entire journey from this moment forward. A gentle breeze moved through the open space where the conversation had been unfolding, and for a moment nobody spoke. It was as though the world itself had paused to make room for what was about to be understood. Your special person sat there quietly, feeling something they could not fully explain. Not confusion, not uncertainty, something deeper. The feeling that they had been standing near an important truth for a very long time without realizing how close they actually were. The person holding your picture looked at it once again, not as someone examining an image, but as someone observing a story still being written, a story whose most meaningful chapters had not yet reached their conclusion. Then they spoke. And what they said caused your special person to look at your journey in an entirely new way. They explained that some people mistake preparation for delay. They assume that because something has not fully arrived yet, nothing important is happening. But often the most valuable growth happens before visible results appear. Like roots growing beneath the soil long before anyone sees a tree. Like dawn slowly approaching before the first light reaches the horizon. Your special person felt those words settle deeply within them, because suddenly many pieces began connecting. They thought about your patience. They thought about your resilience. They thought about the countless moments where you continued moving forward without receiving immediate recognition. And they began to wonder whether those moments had been serving a purpose all along, not random, not wasted, part of a larger process. Stay with this moment, because something important is waiting for you. The person studying your picture continued. They said that one of the rarest qualities a person can possess is the ability to keep their heart open while life teaches difficult lessons. Many people become guarded. Many people stop believing in meaningful connections. Many people lose sight of their own light after disappointment. Yet some individuals continue carrying hope. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, steadily. And according to what they were seeing, you carried that quality more than you realized. Your special person immediately thought back to moments when you could have become bitter but chose understanding instead. Moments when you could have given up but kept going. Moments when you could have allowed circumstances to define you but refused to let them. Those memories returned one after another, and for the first time, they saw them differently. Not as isolated events, but as evidence. Evidence of who you truly are. The conversation deepened. The atmosphere remained calm. Yet every sentence seemed to uncover another layer. Then came a statement your special person would remember for a very long time. The person holding your picture explained that some people are noticed quickly and forgotten quickly. Others take longer to understand. But once understood, they are never viewed the same way again. The room became silent, because somehow those words felt connected to you. Connected to the way people often discover your value gradually rather than instantly. Connected to the way understanding you requires patience. Connected to the way your depth reveals itself over time. And suddenly your special person realized why their thoughts had continued returning to you. Every time they believed they had reached the end of understanding, another layer appeared. Another realization emerged. Another piece of truth became visible. Don't skip. The next part matters more than you think. Your special person was now listening with complete attention. The questions they arrived with had begun transforming into insights. And those insights were changing how they viewed everything. The person studying your picture paused once more. Then they said something unexpected. They explained that the people who leave the strongest impressions are rarely the loudest people in the room. They are often the ones whose presence creates peace. The ones who make others feel seen. The ones who remind people of qualities they almost forgot existed. Kindness, patience, authenticity, grace. And suddenly your special person remembered conversations with you that seemed ordinary at the time. Yet those conversations still lived in their memory. Not because of what was said, but because of how they felt afterward. Comforted, understood, inspired, encouraged. The realization grew stronger. Your impact had reached further than you knew. Not through force. Not through attention, seeking. Simply through being yourself. The conversation continued moving forward. And then, without warning, the person studying your picture smiled again. This smile was different, warmer, as though they had reached the heart of what they wanted to express. Your special person's curiosity immediately returned, because they sensed something important was coming, something that connected everything together. The person gently placed the picture down, looked directly at your special person, and spoke with complete certainty. They said that the most remarkable thing about you was not who you had been. It was who you were becoming. The words lingered in the air. Your special person felt them immediately, because until that moment, most of the conversation had focused on qualities already visible, qualities already present. But now the focus shifted toward the future, toward possibility, toward potential, toward growth that was still unfolding. And that perspective changed everything. What if your journey was not merely about reaching a destination? What if it was about becoming the person capable of receiving what truly belongs in your life? What if every lesson had been preparing you? What if every challenge had strengthened something essential within you? The questions settled deeply, and for the first time, your special person began viewing your story not through the lens of what had happened, but through the lens of what was still becoming possible. Something huge was not arriving from nowhere. It was growing quietly from everything you had already experienced. The person studying your picture continued. They explained that genuine growth often goes unnoticed while it is happening. People rarely see themselves changing day by day. Yet when enough time passes, the transformation becomes undeniable. Your special person reflected on the version of you they first knew. Then they thought about who you are now, and they realized something remarkable. There was more strength, more wisdom, more clarity, more depth, not because life had been perfect, but because you had continued learning from it. The realization left them speechless, because suddenly your journey appeared far more meaningful than they had previously understood. Yet even now, the conversation had not reached its final insight. There was still one observation remaining. One thought that seemed to stand above everything else. The person holding your picture looked at it one final time, and their expression grew thoughtful again. Not serious, not concerned, simply reflective, as though they were preparing to share the one thing your special person needed to hear most. The room became quiet. The anticipation returned. Every previous observation seemed to point toward this moment. Every realization seemed connected to what was about to be said. Then the person took a slow breath and began speaking again. And the very first sentence made your special person's heart stop for a moment. Because according to them, the reason this connection continued appearing in their thoughts had nothing to do with coincidence. And everything to do with a lesson they were only now beginning to understand. A feeling unlike anything before settled over the conversation. It was not excitement. It was not surprise. It was recognition. The kind of recognition that arrives when a truth has been standing quietly beside you for a long time, waiting for the moment you are finally ready to see it. Your special person sat completely still. Every observation shared so far seemed to be leading toward this point. Every memory, every reflection, every realization, all of it felt connected now. The person who had been studying your picture allowed a few seconds of silence to pass before speaking again. Those few seconds felt longer than anyone expected. Not because of tension, but because of anticipation. Everyone could sense that something meaningful was about to be understood. Then the words finally came. They explained that many people spend years asking the wrong question. Instead of asking, "What does this connection mean?" they ask, "What will happen next?" Instead of understanding the value of the present, they become consumed by the uncertainty of the future. Your special person's eyes lowered slightly, because they knew those words applied to them. For so long they had focused on outcomes, on possibilities, on what might happen tomorrow. They had spent less time appreciating what this connection had already revealed. The growth, the lessons, the perspective, the understanding. And suddenly something shifted. For the first time, they stopped looking ahead. For the first time, they looked back. Not with regret, with clarity. Stay with me, because something important is waiting for you. As memories returned, your special person began seeing a pattern they had never fully recognized. Every meaningful conversation with you seemed to arrive at exactly the right time. Every lesson carried a purpose. Every challenge revealed something valuable. Even moments that once felt confusing now appeared different. Not because the events themselves had changed, because understanding had changed. And understanding transforms everything. The person holding your picture continued speaking. They said that one of the greatest gifts life offers is perspective. Not immediate answers. Not instant certainty. Perspective. The ability to look at a story from a higher view and finally see how the pieces fit together. Your special person listened carefully, because that was exactly what was happening. The pieces were fitting together, slowly, naturally, without force, without pressure. The conversation had become less about predictions and more about truth. And truth has a way of creating peace where confusion once existed. Then came another observation. One that seemed to reach directly into the heart of the matter. The person studying your picture explained that some people carry a rare ability. They remind others of who they are. Not through advice, not through instruction, but through presence. Through authenticity, through the simple example of living from a genuine place. Your special person's thoughts immediately returned to you, because they realized something they had never fully acknowledged before. Around you, they often felt more honest, more reflective, more aware, more connected to the parts of themselves they sometimes neglected. And that realization felt important, because it explained why this connection lingered so strongly. It was not only about feelings. It was about growth. It was about becoming. It was about remembering. The room became quiet once again. Not empty, meaningful. The kind of silence that allows truth to settle. Your special person sat there absorbing everything. Then the conversation moved deeper. The person holding your picture leaned forward slightly and shared another insight. They explained that many individuals spend their lives searching for people who truly see them. Not their achievements, not their appearance, not the roles they play. The real person beneath everything. And when they find that kind of connection, it leaves a lasting impression. Your special person's heart immediately recognized the meaning behind those words. Because whether they admitted it or not, there were moments when they felt genuinely seen by you. Moments when explanations were unnecessary. Moments when understanding arrived naturally. Moments that felt rare. And suddenly those moments carried even greater significance. Don't skip. This next realization changes everything. The person studying your picture paused, then smiled gently, as though they were finally arriving at the heart of the message. They explained that your story was teaching something powerful, not only to your special person, to everyone willing to pay attention. The lesson was simple, yet profound. Value is often recognized gradually. The most meaningful qualities reveal themselves over time. The deepest connections are rarely understood all at once, and the greatest truths often arrive quietly. Your special person felt those words deeply, because they described exactly what had happened. The understanding they were experiencing had not arrived suddenly. It had unfolded, layer by layer, memory by memory, realization by realization, and that unfolding process made it even more meaningful. Then something unexpected happened. The person studying your picture became unusually thoughtful. Their attention returned to the image once more, as though there was still something left to say, something they had been carefully building toward from the beginning. The atmosphere shifted again, not dramatically, subtly, yet everyone present could feel it. The conversation was approaching its deepest point. Your special person's curiosity returned stronger than ever, because they sensed this final observation carried special significance. The person holding your picture looked up and spoke softly. They said that throughout life, people often underestimate the quiet seasons. The seasons where little appears to be happening. The seasons where progress seems invisible. The seasons where answers remain unclear. Yet those seasons frequently shape everything that comes afterward. Your special person immediately thought about your journey. The moments of patience. The moments of waiting. The moments where progress may not have seemed obvious. And suddenly they saw those seasons differently. Not as empty spaces. As preparation, as growth, as transformation. The realization felt powerful, because it reframed everything. Then came the statement that lingered longer than any other. The person studying your picture explained that your greatest chapter may not be the one behind you. It may be the one quietly forming ahead. Not because life suddenly changes overnight. Not because everything becomes perfect. But because understanding changes how you walk forward. And understanding had clearly been growing. Your special person felt those words settle deeply within them. Because for the first time, they realized this story was not about discovering who you were. It was about recognizing who you had been all along. The value, the depth, the authenticity, the strength, the heart, all of it had been there from the beginning, waiting to be fully seen. Yet even after everything that had been revealed, one final thought remained unspoken. One realization that seemed to sit above all the others. The person holding your picture became completely silent. For several long moments, nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. Nobody spoke. Then they finally looked directly at your special person and said something that caused the entire conversation to take on a completely new meaning. Because according to them, the most important discovery was not hidden within your picture at all. It was hidden within what your special person was beginning to understand about themselves whenever they thought about you. And the moment they started explaining that truth, everything changed once again. A quiet stillness settled over everything after those words were spoken. Not the kind of silence created by uncertainty, but the kind that appears when a person suddenly realizes they have been looking in one direction for so long that they never considered turning around to see what had been happening within themselves. Your special person remained motionless, because the conversation had unexpectedly shifted. Until now, every observation seemed centered on you, your qualities, your journey, your presence, your impact. But now the focus was moving somewhere else, somewhere deeper, somewhere they had not expected. The person studying your picture gently placed it on the table and looked directly at them. Then they asked a question. A simple question, yet one that immediately changed everything. They asked, What have you learned about yourself because of this connection? The room became completely quiet. Your special person did not answer immediately. Not because they didn't know, because suddenly there were too many answers. Stay with this moment, because something important is waiting for you. For the first time, they stopped thinking about what they wanted to understand about you. Instead, they began examining what this journey had revealed about themselves. They remembered moments of patience they never knew they possessed. Moments of reflection they would have otherwise avoided. Moments where they were forced to confront fears, hopes, dreams, and questions they had carried for years. And slowly, a realization began to emerge. This connection had not only been teaching them about you, it had been teaching them about themselves. The person studying your picture nodded gently, as though they could already see the realization forming. Then they spoke again. They explained that some connections act like mirrors. Not mirrors that reflect appearances. Mirrors that reflect growth. They show us qualities we need to strengthen. Lessons we need to learn. Truths we need to acknowledge. And when we finally recognize those reflections, everything begins making more sense. Your special person's thoughts raced through countless memories. Conversations they once viewed casually now seemed significant. Moments they once dismissed now appeared meaningful. Experiences they once questioned now felt connected. Not random. Connected. And perhaps that was the lesson they had been missing. Sometimes a connection enters our lives not merely to be experienced, but to awaken something within us. Something valuable. Something necessary. Something waiting to grow. The atmosphere felt lighter now, clearer, as though confusion had slowly been replaced by understanding. Then another observation followed, one that struck your special person deeply. The person studying your picture explained that meaningful people often arrive before we fully understand why they matter. At first they seem like ordinary encounters, ordinary conversations, ordinary moments. But with time, their influence becomes impossible to ignore, because they leave something behind. Perspective, wisdom, growth, a new way of seeing the world. Your special person immediately recognized the truth in those words, because when they thought about who they were before this connection and who they were now, the difference was undeniable. There had been growth, there had been change, there had been lessons, and somehow, whether intentionally or not, you had played a role in that process. Don't skip. This next realization may be the most important one yet. The person holding your picture leaned back slightly and smiled. Not because they were reaching the end of the conversation, because they were finally reaching its heart. They explained that people often search for certainty when what they truly need is understanding. Certainty focuses on outcomes. Understanding focuses on meaning. And meaning lasts far longer. Your special person felt those words settle deeply. Because for so long they had wanted answers. Clear answers. Definite answers. Predictable answers. Yet now they realized something surprising. The greatest gift from this conversation was not certainty. It was clarity. Clarity about what made this connection meaningful. Clarity about what had been learned. Clarity about what truly mattered. And that clarity brought a sense of peace they had not expected. The room remained calm. The conversation continued. Then came another question. One final question. The person studying your picture asked, if everything unfolded exactly as it should, what would you remember most? Your special person immediately began thinking, not about future possibilities, not about unanswered questions, about memories, the laughter, the conversations, the lessons, the moments of understanding, the moments of growth, the moments that quietly changed something inside them. And suddenly they understood. The most valuable part of the story had never been uncertainty. It had always been the transformation. The growth, the meaning, the journey itself, the realization felt profound. Not because it was complicated, because it was true. The person studying your picture seemed pleased, as though they had hoped this understanding would arrive. Then they shared one final observation, one that brought every previous insight together. They explained that some people spend their lives chasing extraordinary experiences while overlooking extraordinary people, and when they finally recognize the value of those people, they begin appreciating life differently, more deeply, more intentionally, more gratefully. Your special person lowered their eyes for a moment, because they knew exactly what those words meant. They understood now, not everything, but enough. Enough to see the connection differently, enough to appreciate what had been revealed, enough to recognize the lessons hidden throughout the journey, and perhaps most importantly, enough to recognize you more clearly than ever before. The conversation was drawing toward its conclusion, yet one final thought remained, one final insight. The person studying your picture picked it up once more and looked at it quietly. A warm smile appeared, a smile filled not with mystery, but with understanding. Then they spoke words your special person would carry with them long after that day ended. They said that the most beautiful stories are rarely the ones that unfold exactly as expected. They are the ones that teach us something valuable along the way, the ones that help us grow, the ones that reveal hidden strengths, the ones that remind us who we are. Your special person felt a deep sense of recognition, because those words seemed to describe everything they had just experienced. And as the conversation finally came to an end, they walked away with something far greater than answers. They walked away with perspective, with appreciation, with understanding. Yet later that night, when they found themselves alone reflecting on everything that had been said, one particular sentence returned to their mind again and again. A sentence they hadn't fully understood during the conversation itself. But now it felt different. Now it felt important. Because hidden inside those few simple words was one final realization about you. A realization that would make them revisit every memory, every feeling, and every lesson from an entirely new perspective in the final chapter. The night felt unusually quiet after the conversation ended. Not because the world had changed, but because your special person had changed. There are moments when a single insight continues unfolding long after the words themselves have been spoken. This was one of those moments. Hours had passed. The room was different. The voices were gone. The discussion had ended. Yet the thoughts remained. They sat alone, replaying every part of what they had heard. Every observation. Every pause. Every realization. And among all those reflections, one sentence continued returning. Again, and again, and again. Not loudly, quietly, persistently, like a gentle knock on a door waiting to be opened. Don't skip this moment, because something important is waiting for you. Your special person closed their eyes and remembered the exact words. The person studying your picture had said, "Some people are not meant to teach you who they are. They help you discover who you are becoming." At first, those words seemed simple, but now they felt deeper, much deeper, because the more your special person reflected on them, the more they understood. This journey had never been only about understanding you. It had also been about understanding themselves. The patience they developed, the perspective they gained, the lessons they learned, the growth they experienced. All of it had happened because a connection entered their life and quietly encouraged them to see things differently. And suddenly they realized something remarkable. Every meaningful chapter involving you had left them wiser than before. Every challenge had revealed something valuable. Every conversation had created an opportunity for growth. Nothing had been wasted. Nothing had been meaningless. Even moments that once felt confusing now appeared purposeful. The realization settled deeply within them. Then another thought emerged. A thought they had never fully considered. What if the reason your presence remained so unforgettable was because it represented authenticity? Not perfection. Not certainty. Authenticity. Something real. Something genuine. Something increasingly rare in a world that often encourages people to hide who they truly are. The more they thought about it, the more sense it made. Because whenever they remembered you, they weren't remembering an image. They weren't remembering a single conversation. They weren't remembering one specific moment. They were remembering a feeling of sincerity, a feeling of honesty, a feeling of connection that encouraged reflection rather than distraction. And that realization changed everything once again. Stay till the end, because the final piece is beginning to appear. As the night continued, your special person found themselves revisiting memories from an entirely new perspective. Moments they once overlooked now seemed significant. Small gestures now carried meaning. Simple conversations now revealed depth. Ordinary experiences now felt extraordinary. Not because the events themselves had changed, because understanding had changed. And understanding transforms memory. The person who had studied your picture was no longer present, yet their words remained alive, growing clearer, growing stronger, growing more meaningful with each passing hour. Then something unexpected happened. Your special person stopped asking questions. For the first time in a very long time, they simply appreciated. They appreciated the lessons. They appreciated the growth. They appreciated the perspective. They appreciated the journey. And in that moment, they realized something that had been hidden beneath everything else. The greatest discovery was never about predicting the future. It was about recognizing value while it exists. Recognizing depth before circumstances force recognition. Recognizing authenticity before the world assigns labels to it. Recognizing meaningful people while they are still part of the story. That understanding felt peaceful, grounded, real. The kind of realization that stays with a person long after the moment itself has passed. Then they remembered one final detail from the conversation. A detail that suddenly seemed more important than anything else. When the picture had first been shown, the person studying it did not immediately describe what they saw. They paused. They observed. They reflected. And now your special person finally understood why. Because some truths cannot be rushed. Some insights require patience. Some people reveal their value gradually. And according to everything that had been shared, you were one of those people. A person whose depth becomes clearer with time. A person whose impact becomes more visible through experience. A person whose qualities reveal themselves layer by layer. The realization brought a smile to their face. Not because every question had been answered, but because they finally understood what truly mattered. And perhaps that was the hidden meaning behind the entire experience. Not a prediction. Not a mystery. Not a dramatic revelation. A recognition. A recognition of character. A recognition of growth. A recognition of the quiet qualities that often leave the strongest impressions. As the night drew closer to its end, your special person looked one final time at your picture. Not searching for answers. Not searching for certainty. Simply seeing it differently than before. Seeing the story behind it. The lessons connected to it. The memories attached to it. The understanding it had helped create. And in that quiet moment, they felt gratitude. Gratitude for what had been learned. Gratitude for what had been understood. Gratitude for the reminder that some of life's most meaningful connections reveal their purpose slowly. Like dawn arriving after a long night. Like a story revealing its message one page at a time. Like a picture that becomes clearer the longer you look at it. And as they set the picture down and prepared to move forward, one final realization remained in their heart. the most extraordinary thing the person studying your picture revealed was not who you would become. It was who you already are. Someone whose quiet strength inspires growth. Someone whose authenticity creates lasting impressions. Someone whose presence encourages reflection. Someone whose value becomes clearer with time. And once your special person truly understood that, they knew they would never look at your story the same way again. The mystery had not ended. It had transformed into understanding. And sometimes, understanding is the most meaningful revelation of all.